Dexter. There are consequences to everything you do in life. Lose control, become powerless, and it's over.
Dexter Morgan has always been a monster. Make no mistake about it. Dexter being a monster has always been a common theme in the show, and that has held true throughout the entire run of Dexter New Blood. Indeed, the show creators were practically beating us over the head with this point in Episode 9, The Family Business. Dexter has never been some heroic vigilante out seeking justice. That is a common misconception among a significant faction with the greater fan base. Dexter is no hero. He is not out there murdering bad people in the name of justice. He's no Batman. He's no Dark Defender. Dexter is out there murdering people because he's a demented individual who gets pleasure from harming and killing. Period. Simply put, Dexter is a sick bastard. The Family Business drives home this point, and it acts as a near-perfect depiction of the constant themes throughout the show, and also the driving forces behind Dexter's demented mindset. From his so-called dark passenger, to the code instilled upon him by Nutjob Harry, to the finer details of executing the code in a way to avoid exposure and capture. Dexter also emphasized the importance of being able to blend in. Dexter's dark passenger is quite literally his desire to harm and kill others. Dexter usually only goes on the hunt for targets that adhere to this code, and they're generally bad people who either cover their tracks or slip through the cracks of law enforcement. So by and large, Dexter is killing bad people. But again, Dexter isn't some noble vigilante fighting for justice in the American way. No. Dexter is a monster. And Dexter channels his dark passenger urges through Harry's code, and this was perfectly illustrated in The Family Business. Now wait a minute. I'm sure some of you were probably thinking Dexter is a hero. After all, as Harrison said, what about all the lives he saved by taking out the trash and eliminating bad guys?
How many times have you done this?
A lot.
How many?
In the hundreds.
So that means you've saved like thousands of innocent people.
That's right.
There is some truth in this. After all, by channeling his dark passenger in accordance with the code, Dexter is preventing many monsters from killing again. Ergo, he is making the world a better place. That might be a valid viewpoint favoring the flawed view that Dexter is a hero, not a monster. It might be a valid viewpoint if it didn't entirely ignore the other side of the coin. The innocent lives Dexter destroyed. Lives ended at the hand of Dexter where he didn't adhere to the code. There are several known examples of this. There was the photographer he mistakenly believed was a monster. Dexter cut corners in his vetting process, and he later discovered that he got the wrong man. Then there was Miguel's brother Oscar, who Dexter killed when stalking Freebo. There was also that scuzzy-looking fella that Dexter killed in an impulsive rage following Rita's death. Those are all examples of people Dexter killed where he did not properly vet these victims. Who knows? Maybe these 3 victims all did fit the code. But the point is, Dexter did not adhere to the code for these kills. Even Matt Caldwell may have fit the bill because the evidence Dexter relied on was hearsay, not definitive proof. It might be tempting to overlook those kills because let's be real. Whether they were killers or not, those are 4 scumbags Dexter eliminated from society. Well, that's one way of looking at it, but the more concerning issue are the innocents who died as an indirect result of Dexter's monstrous ways. Sergeant Dokes, his beloved wife Rita, his boss LaGuerta, his adoptive sister Deborah. These are the big 4, although you can argue there were more indirect innocent victims of Dexter's rage. You could make a case for Ellen Wolf belonging in that category, and you can likewise maybe make a case that even a few others like Lewis fall into this category. But the big 4 are Dokes, Rita, LaGuerta, and Deb, the last of whom's life was in constant danger because of her proximity to Dexter. With the exception of Deb, Dexter wasn't the one actually killing anybody, and even in Deb's case, it can be viewed as a mercy kill after the damage had already been done beyond repair. But even though these four didn't die directly at Dexter's hands, they most certainly would not have died in the manner they did were it not for the fact that Dexter Morgan is a monster. If Dexter wasn't a monster, Dokes would have never been on to him, he'd have never been locked in a cage, and Lila would have never blown him up. If Dexter wasn't a monster, he'd have never been hunting Trinity, a man Dexter was convinced can teach him a thing or two, and if he wasn't hunting Trinity, poor Rita would have never wound up getting killed in that bathtub in front of young Harrison. If Dexter wasn't a monster, LaGuerta would have never been tipped off by his sloppy mistake when he left a blood slide at the Doomsday crime scene. And if Dexter wasn't a monster, he'd have never been hunting Saxon, and Deb would not have suffered irreparable damage that effectively ended her ability to live. Even if we ignore Dexter's mercy kill in this instance, Deb would never have been in that position were it not for the fact her adoptive brother was a monster. If we examine some of the examples of Dexter killing others in front of a witness, key examples are Sergeant Dokes, Lumen Pierce, Deborah Morgan, Harry Morgan, and now Harrison Morgan. There was also Vogel and maybe a few others like the kid in the trunk, but those situations were fundamentally different from the aforementioned. In terms of the key examples, their reactions to witnessing Dexter doing his thing reveal something about those characters. Now that Harrison is the most recent witness to Dexter performing his ritual, what can we learn about that experience when comparing it to other characters? Dokes, Harry, and Deb were all horrified by what they saw. Watching Dexter in action, they immediately and correctly recognized him for the monster he is. They were all visibly shaken when they saw Dexter killing. Deb saw him do this several times. And like Harrison, Harry and Dokes had the honor of watching the joy he exuded when chopping up the bodies to hide the evidence of his crimes. They saw Dexter in all of his glory. Lumen was a special case. Her darkness was predicated on a desire for revenge against people who abused and tortured her. Lumen's rage was limited to the scope of getting vengeance against those who wronged her. But once her and Dexter took all of them out, her urge to kill dissipated. When justice was served, her variation of a dark passenger vanished. And then we have Miguel Prado. Him and Dexter had an epic 80s-style bromance, and Miguel at times seemed to love everything about Dexter. Miguel loved it. He wanted to get his hands dirty and help with the heavy lifting. Miguel never actually watched Dexter kill anyone. He instead did the killing himself under Dexter's supervision. But he was a monster too, and he was using Dexter to essentially learn how to get away with murder. Miguel exposed the absurdity of the code's rationalization. After all, killing good defense attorneys would save lives too. When Harrison witnessed Dexter, there was a little overlap with each of those three groupings. Like Miguel, Harrison seemed okay with his old man doing his thing, with the rationale that killing bad people saves lives. There is also a similar revenge angle, where Lumen and Harrison were both personally wronged by the Barrel Girl killers and Kurt respectively. Harrison likewise has a darkness that, at least on some level, seems driven by a desire to avenge his own mother. There is a personal touch, not identical, but certainly overlapping. Harrison likewise was in the unique position to watch the pure joy his monster of a father receives during the post-kill portion of his ritual. And like Harry, Dokes, and Deb, Harrison seemed visibly uneasy watching and listening to this all unfold. Harrison wasn't quite as horrified as those three, but he is younger, and he seemed like he was trying to make his dad proud after finally bonding with him, perhaps not fully realizing the full scope of his sick bastard father. Then with Deb in particular, and also perhaps Lumen, Dexter has also made his son an accomplice to murder. Dexter went through a period of almost 10 years where he abstained from killing. This in itself is proof of him being a monster, because he has exhibited an ability for self-restraint. During that time, Dexter even bowled a perfect game, which makes you wonder what type of productive life he may have lived if Nutjob Harry didn't train him to become a serial killer from a young age. If Harry made efforts to help Dexter by suppressing his dark passenger rather than encouraging it, then perhaps Dexter wouldn't have wound up fulfilling his monstrous potential. On some level, Dexter must be wondering that too, as proven through his inner monologue argument with Deb, where she was horrified that Dexter would reveal his true self to Harrison. Dexter has wanted to believe that his son is exactly like him. He selfishly wants Harrison to be like him because he believes it will help fill a void in his life where he has a true connection with someone. But more importantly, Dexter wants his son to be like him because it will give him an excuse to start killing again, because he can justify teaching the code to Harrison to, quote, keep him safe like Harry did for him. It turns out that Harrison does have a dark passenger in the same context as Dexter. And here we are. Dexter is trying to keep Harry's legacy alive by passing it down to his son. But the entire reason Dexter went into seclusion was because by the end of season 8, the original Lumberjack finale, Dexter realized that his inner monster inherently puts those around him in danger. And he's either forgotten that or he simply no longer cares. But on some fundamental level, Harrison's darkness is different than Dexter's. Harrison seems to have a genuine sense of justice, whereas Dexter just pretends to. Dexter is no hero, and despite the fact he tried portraying himself as such with his Mr. Wiggles example, Dexter is a monster. He enjoys killing people and chopping them up, usually into 9 pieces depending on the size. I bet little Chino is probably at least a dozen pieces. But Harrison saw the utter joy Dexter had doing his thing, and he likewise seemed to recognize the irony that Dexter is guilty of the exact things he accused Kurt of being.
You love the hunt, the capture, their terror, feeding you. You deserve to die.
But if Dexter Morgan is really such a monster, why then is it so easy to root for him? Well, Dexter is a monster, and there is a rich history of rooting for monsters in cinema. You have the slasher genre monsters like Jason Voorhees of Friday the 13th and Michael Myers from the Halloween franchise. The appeal toward Dexter is similar, but in those other cases, things are very black and white. Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers are just plain old evil. Dexter Morgan is a much more complicated proposition. Like Jason and Michael, it is fun to root for Dexter, but things aren't black and white. The complexity of Dexter's character is part of what makes the character so compelling. There is a huge gray area within Dexter's code of conduct. And I don't mean Harry's code, I mean how he actually lives his life, which results in many moral questions regarding ethical standards. The complexity of the character has more in common with guys like Tony Soprano from The Sopranos and Walter White from Breaking Bad. All 3 iconic characters are monsters. You have 3 anti-heroes where nothing is black and white. At times, this iconic trio seem like good people who sometimes do bad things, but they aren't good people. At best, they are bad people who sometimes do good things. With all 3 iconic characters, their defining moments reveal them for the true monsters they are. For those who remain unconvinced that Dexter Morgan has always been a monster, ask yourself, why did Harry teach him the code in the first place? Because Harry believed Dexter was a monster, so he raised him in such a way. Harry wanted to believe that Dexter was a monster. He made Dexter believe he was a monster. Isn't that very similar to what we have right now? Dexter wants to believe Harrison is a monster. He's wanted to believe it all season long. He is trying to make Harrison believe that he too is a monster. And Harrison has proven he does indeed have an inner monster, which begs the question, is Dexter making the same mistake as Nutjob Harry before him? Is Harrison inevitably a monster? Or is there a chance he won't become one in a healthy environment? When you look back on the entire series, the first 4 seasons were clearly the show in its peak form. The biggest writing blunder in the show was when they wrote themselves into a corner by killing Rita. She was truly the glue that helped make the show work on an elite level. Right now, Dexter New Blood, in my humble opinion, is not on that level. It just isn't. The writing in the story is not on par with the Ice Truck Killer, the Bay Harbor Butcher, Miguel Prado, and the Trinity Killer. So Dexter New Blood is not as good as the first 4 seasons, but it might be consistently better than anything after season 4. Better than 6 and 8, and in the same ballpark as 5 and 7. But what Dexter New Blood achieves is a consistent level of intensity, rarely seen since before the silly Doomsday story. But here's the thing following Rita's death. Dexter never paid the piper for Rita dying because of Dexter's inner monster. And there was never a real payoff here. Rita died, Dexter lost her, and that was it. He moved on as if nothing happened, leaving the lives of Aster, Cody, and Harrison in total ruin. Rita didn't deserve to die, the children didn't deserve to become motherless, and Dexter never suffered any real consequences. He grieved for like a minute, and he moved on with his true passion, being a selfish monster. Rita should have represented the beginning of the end, but inexplicably it did not. The writers of the later seasons of Dexter doubled down on this when they killed Deb. And even worse, they dragged Deb's character through the mud where she abandoned every single principle she ever held dear. She abandoned everything she stood for. She became an accomplice to murder. She later became a cold-blooded murderer herself. And Dexter never suffered any real consequences. Aside from the fact he was forced to move into isolation when he finally recognized the danger he posed to all of his loved ones. If Dexter New Blood wants to redeem the legacy of the entire franchise, Dexter needs to face consequences. He needs to pay the piper. His reckless, selfish behavior throughout Dexter New Blood further demands it. I'm not saying Dexter needs to die, and I'm not even necessarily saying he has to wind up in jail. Those are strong possibilities, of course, but he needs to pay some price. Not only for Rita, where he never paid the piper, not only for Deborah, where he likewise never paid the piper. Dexter needs to pay the piper one way or another, because if he does not suffer any real consequences, then Dexter New Blood will not act as redemption for our favorite Lumberjack ending.
He's a lumberjack and he's okay. He sleeps all night and he works all day.
One way or another, Harrison figures into the big picture in the upcoming finale, and obviously Angela does too. But in my humble opinion, the only satisfying conclusion is one where Dexter has to pay a hefty price. Now, if they wind up having another season or 2 and stretch things out, well, then they misled us when they said Dexter New Blood would provide a real conclusion. I wouldn't complain if the plan all along was a 3-season arc that culminated in the real finale, but assuming we only have just under 1 hour left in the entire Dexter universe, Dexter Morgan has always been a monster, and he needs to suffer serious consequences if Dexter New Blood has any chance of redeeming the Lumberjack ending. Dexter needs to pay the piper. I, for one, cannot wait to see how they wrap up the franchise, and I'll be drinking a damn fine cup of coffee when it drops. You betcha. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed, and have a wonderful night.
Damn it, Dexter. There are consequences to everything you do in life. Lose control, become powerless, and it's over. Over.
What's wrong? Are you okay?
Just stay away.
Please, stay away.
When Harry saw what I truly was, he was repulsed.
Never underestimate the capacity of other people to let you down.
It's not the time, Dad.
I was born in blood, just like you. I had the same violent urges. When I was your age, like you, I didn't know how to deal with them.
Sometimes a kid just ends up suffering for the choices of his father.
The sins of the father go on, from kid to kid to kid, unless someone, you, chooses to end them. But my dad taught me a code, a way to channel those urges.
Was there one final lesson where I said, go now, far and wide, and preach the code, my son? I don't think so.
Prison might have been better in the long term.
Prison would be better? Whose side are you on?
How many times have you done this?
A lot.
How many?
In the hundreds.
So that means you've saved like thousands of innocent people.
That's right. Just doing her job.
You should tell that to the parents of all of those people that our clients have killed.
It's your wet dream in there.
Okay.
You're going in first, alone. Get a sense of what we're dealing with and give me a report.
I live by my father's law.
No! Morgan! Morgan! Don't do this!
You all right? Yeah, I'm okay. I'm gonna go get some air, like you said.
You love the hunt, the capture, their terror, feeding you. You deserve to die.
You're a good cop. You're a good person. You're not like him. Put him down! Beg.
To his own severed head. A head which at this time has no name.
I know his name.
Is there any progress on putting up that stop sign over by Lewis's package store? That's an accident waiting to happen.
Damn it, Dexter. There are consequences to everything you do in life. Lose control, become powerless, and it's over.
He cuts down trees, he skips and jumps, he likes to press wildflowers. He puts on women's clothing and hangs around in bars. He's a lumberjack. Surprise, motherfucker.
I'm the Bay Harbor Butcher.